Hi everyone, it's Roger and James here from the What's on Disney Plus podcast. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about Disney Plus kind of growing up, and we're getting a lot of extra content this month, and what might be going on with Disney Plus right now, especially in the United States. We'll also be talking about how Disney Plus's unscripted department has been really struggling and is considered a mess by experts. And we'll also be talking about some other content that they've announced during the week. We'll be talking about a host of another bits of news. Plus, we'll be sharing our thoughts on this week's episode of the Book of Boba Fett and the latest National Geographic documentary, Torn. So, before we do any of that, just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, you can subscribe here on YouTube. We just hit over 60,000 subscribers. You can also follow us on our podcast feed as well. You can find us over there. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, etc. If you'd like to support us, you can do so by becoming a YouTube channel member or a patron. That helps pay towards our hosting, pays towards the bills, pays towards all kinds of stuff. And your support really doesn't matter. So a huge thank you to all of our gold, diamond, and platinum followers, including Sarah, Andrew, Elliot, Jacob, Caleb, Red Marsman, Aero G. We also got Andrew, Cody, Darren, and Lauren while over on the YouTubes. A big thank you and hello to Raphael. We've also got Jay Blue, and then we've got Diona. We've got Ricky. We've got Dana, Dave, Adam, Mohammed. We've got Ben. We've got My VCR Still Works, Bina, Joshua, Dawn, Martin, Jeremy, and Sarah. So thank you so much for all of your support. As I said, it really makes a lot. So we'll be back with another live Q&A tomorrow here on YouTube. And on that note, let's jump into it. So we've had quite a lot of stuff this week. We've got some different things to talk about. First off, let's bring up one of the big ones here, which is going to be that this month Disney is honoring Black History Month. And in doing so, what they're adding a lot of content onto Disney Plus that you maybe wouldn't have expected. They have already announced that we're going to be getting some ABC News specials. Soul of the Nation, which is the murder of Malcolm X and 55 Years to Justice. We're also going to be getting I can't say this right without putting my teeth in. Screen Queens Rising. I keep getting that one mixed up. And then they kind of revealed, some of the ESPN content that's been dropping. Interesting enough, side note, they did drop a ice hockey one onto the US this week. It's continuing that trend of, I'm wondering if we're going to be getting ESPN content either right through the Olympics or just in general, just kind of drop feeding things in. Also got a new series of shorts, Rise Up, Sing Out. Summer of Soul will be arriving on February the 8th, which is going to be that's a big one. That one was originally released on Hulu last year. The Wonder Years will be arriving on February the 9th, followed by The Last American Slave Ship will be arriving at the week later, the National Geographic documentary, followed up with The Proud Family. Also, I just want to bring up, Disney did also put up the next on Disney Plus video for February. In the actual descriptions, it did say that Grownish and Blackish are set to come on the 9th of February as well. However, they weren't included in the video, and I have been told that they're not coming, but we're just going to have to wait and see. This time next week, it'll either be there or it won't be. But the fact that it's not in the video, there might be a bit of an issue. They've done this in the past, but that would have been, I expect, dropping at some point. But yeah, some really big, surprising sort of stuff coming in there. And along with, and I'm going to throw this in kind of in with the same thing, Snowdrop. We're going to be getting all 16 episodes on the 9th. So this is the first ever Star original to be released in the US on Disney Plus. I think it's rated at least a 15 plus in Australia. Hasn't yet been rated here for the UK because we're getting it on the same day as you guys. So that's a massive, great big announcement. So we went from February having nothing to suddenly February having a lot more interesting stuff than we thought. But what did you think of this announcement, James?
Nothing too surprising. Obviously, they wanted to get a lot of content on there, and there's a number of documentaries that I'm looking forward to watching on that, as well as The Proud Family. We've talked about it previously. I've never seen the original show. I'm going to watch a couple episodes of that, but honestly, the trailers for the new one look really funny, so I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, it's also, I'm looking forward to seeing how this can go. So I've not seen any of it before, so it'll be interesting to see how this animated series works out. But I think for Black History Month, on one hand, it's good to see this stuff being added. The Wonder Years has been something I've been talking about for a while, that there's something that felt like it should have been added onto there. But it feels like, those documentaries are a little bit more heavy hitting. A little bit, sometimes Disney have kind of not quite gone in on some of the harder hitting documentaries. They've kind of held back a bit. And I thought, so on one hand, we're getting some harder hit documentaries, and then just some great new like binge shows, which we're not used to seeing on Disney Plus.
Yeah, but that's exactly why I want to see these documentaries too. It does look like they're covering a bit more heavy content. They're not really fluff pieces, at least on the surface.
No.
We'll talk about another pretty heavy documentary later.
Yes. That'll be torn. We'll talk about that one. Because the one thing I was going to bring up, and I think it all kind of interconnects with everything right now. Of Disney Plus is going for a stage now where it's having to grow up. It can't be sustained as it was. There was a lot of talk about the fact that they need to add more, and they said they're going to start dealing with it. And going into 2022, that was what we were hoping for. It does feel like in the last few weeks, we're starting to see some content drip feeding. It's very much a drip feed. I mean, we've got a quarterly results coming up this week, so I'm hoping we get some kind of announcements there. But we're seeing a lot of shifting going on. If you'd said to us 2-3 weeks ago that we'd be sat here talking about Snowdrop, The Wonder Years, some ABC documentaries, some documentaries about Malcolm X, I don't think we would have said. I don't think that's probably. I would. Well, if I was writing an article, I'd have just been saying these are coming to Hulu. I never would even have thought that Disney Plus in the US would have got these yet.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a double take moment. When I looked at it, it's like, oh, this is coming to Hulu. Oh no, this is coming to Disney Plus in America.
Yeah,
and the cat's excited about it too. Apparently. Yeah, we'll talk about Snowdrop in a second, but yeah, it's good to see them bringing the stuff on here, and I think documentaries are a good way to start getting people acclimated to the idea of more mature content, because we're more willing to accept, this is an informational thing. It's telling us about something, and sometimes real life is fairly brutal, and and you can't really sanitize it. And then once you get people used to having these more mature documentaries, you can start getting content in as well. So I'm not saying like you're going to see Walking Dead next week or anything like that, but you start to see this slow ramp up, like we had. Like you might see something along the lines of Love Victor copy, not actual Love Victor, but similar to that.
I definitely feel like for me now, I am wondering if they are going to be going with the whole concept of like, do they want to kind of slowly edge us into having US having that extra content, having that kind of thing where, slowly drip feed in some things just to kind of start pushing the boundaries a little bit, not necessarily doing everything all at once, maybe like they did with Star, where, here's 500 things that come in, maybe just edge in, might be the best way for Disney to kind of do this, of just slowly push the boundaries a little bit more each time until they're ready to kind of, because, I think, it's like with Snowdrop is kind of one of those things that go, well, it's a dubbed Korean drama series. Therefore, it might not catch kids aren't going to watch it in the same way. But it might be one of the first kind of big tests of them starting to use their parental controls, because they put them in the US the same that they've got here. The only difference is we have 16 and 18. Will they turn that on? Will they turn that on suddenly on Wednesday and put like Snowdrop to a 16? Because I could see that happening, of like, we're going to start kind of, edging it in that way and using these settings and just slowly creep it in rather than doing the full big star drop.
Yeah, there's something to be said for both methods, kind of slowly creeping it up so that you get more and more used to it over time. And then also we'll rip off the Band-Aid and we'll get the outrage out over one single title, and then after that it becomes a norm. You see this in video game markets all the time, where they will introduce some very unpopular item. I think it's NFTs being added into video games right now, and it's really one company goes out there, they get all the outrage, and then it just becomes the normal, like the horse armor from way back in the day. But Disney's obviously going the opposite approach for Disney Plus in America, where there's kind of going, all right, we're going to move it a little bit forward and a little bit more forward. Reminder: Pam and Tommy is not on the American. For the people on the podcast, he pulled up the Disney Plus screen from
the UK.
From the UK, and Pam and Tommy are right there. So that's not going to happen in America, where you're just going to walk in and there's Pam and Tommy. Which was a really good show, but I will be amazed if that ever shows up on Disney Plus in America, even if they do a Hulu merge.
Yeah, it is strange. Does feel like, they are pushing the boundaries. I am 100%. I am feeling like if we don't get an announcement of a Hulu purchase at some point later this year, I'll be surprised. And there's been a lot of talk about the fact, and it's not just, and this is not just shareholders, we're talking about industry insiders. Kevin Mayer, who obviously used to run Disney Plus, he literally was like talking this week with Bloomberg, because he's working for a big like sports network and stuff like that. And they're all saying you're seeing a lot of consolidation, you're seeing lots of things coming together, because ultimately people are only going to subscribe to 4 or 5 streaming services, and everyone now is trying to get everything in place. And Disney can't have 3 or 4 streaming services and expect everyone to, we are seeing it. I mean, we talked a lot about ESPN last week. We've seen some more ESPN content drop in the US this past week. Australia had like 20, 25, 30 documentaries drop on Friday. We're also hearing reports out of Latin America that some testing is being done. There's literally loads of ESPN kind of in the code, some live tests and some events are going in there. It's all revving up, and then it's like we've gone from nothing to something quite quickly. And I think, they are very much looking at the fact of a streaming bundle is just not going to work. I've been reading stuff about, Paramount Plus and Bet and Pluto and Showtime. They're all running multiple streaming platforms and trying to do bundles. And it's like, people ain't going to do that. People are going to be much more picky.
And I think the problem that Disney has had too is that the bundle has even more apps to it. Like I remember back when Disney Plus was first launching, I mentioned many times, for me personally, if they had a bundle that was Disney Plus and Hulu without ads, I would have considered that. I think I still would have gone with the 3-year package like I did, but that would have been more tempting. But the only packages you could find were Disney Plus, Hulu with ads, and ESPN. I'm like, I don't even want the ESPN one in the first place. I'll just do this separately. And it took me more than a year to eventually subscribe to Hulu, where I could have actually considered it before.
But yeah, I definitely feel like we're in that sort of situation now where, things are, it feels like in the last 2-3 weeks, we're just seeing things just being pushed in such a, and it's exciting from the point of view of, I feel like, especially from my point of view, I've obviously we've Disney Plus added Star. I think like either next week or the week after, we've had it a year, and we've just seen it just grow and grow and grow. And you're like looking at that going, this is the better experience, because you're getting everything in one place. It's just a better platform altogether, and multiple. You can just see the way the industry's changing, and I don't feel like it's a case of if Disney does merge things together. I think it's when, and obviously the Comcast deal is going to be the issue, but we're seeing a drip feed. ESPN content and Hulu content is being drip feed onto Disney Plus in the US literally in this week.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of curious about what documentaries ended up in Australia, because I wonder if ESPN ever did a feature on that speed skater that they had a number of years ago who ended up winning gold at the Olympics.
We did literally this past week. We did have a new. I'm going to bring it up here. We had a new collection added onto Disney Plus. It was the sports collection. Almost like there's something going on right now, and pretty much.
I don't know what that could be.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. I think people running around playing with a hockey stick or something. It always gets me is like you're watching the Olympics and go, look, no one's cared about this in 4 years since the last time. No one I don't know. I never get the appeal of like of these sport things. Like if everyone was so interested in it, wouldn't we be watching like and hear of these people every week when they're doing a race or
You would think so. I actually take the opposite approach with it, where it's kind of fun to see the sports that you don't get to see highlighted every 4 years. So yeah, it's fun to see like the ice hockey players, representing their country, which they normally don't get to do. But I'm totally in on watching like the speed skating, the curling, the I forget what it's called, but where you ski around in a circle and shoot a gun every round. The name of it is on the tip of my head.
I ended up watching like speed skating, female speed skating this morning while I was having my breakfast. I don't know why, but there we go.
I find it fascinating. I love speed skating.
What was
I've never
that
done it myself, but
I was going to say, what was that documentary you were after?
Oh, I don't know what it's called. And I'm sure a bunch of Australians will come in and correct us on it. But there was an Australian speed skater in, I want to say, the early 2000s, maybe even in the previous Chinese Olympics. I don't know. And he won gold literally because everybody else fell over.
Oh, right.
They had a giant crash, and he is a legend in Australia. I'm sure our Australian viewers are like, it's this guy. I know this guy immediately.
Yeah. Doesn't look like it. Well, look, we've got Eddie the Eagle, so the Brits, we can't say we're doing just as well as that one. But yeah, so I think we're definitely seeing this kind of whole thing of things are shifting. We, like I said, we got a quarterly results coming up this week. It wouldn't be a surprise. We've got an annual, but things are shifting. Things are moving around much quicker than I would suspect. And yes, that's good. And I kind of slide this into our next topic a little bit of apparently, according to a recent article at the Business Insider, they talked about how they spoke to a number of experts and agents and producers about who was the best people to go to sell unscripted and reality TV shows. So this wasn't just about Disney Plus; it was about all of them, about all the different streamers. Where does it go? And this is what one of them said about the Disney Unscripted. They said, rounds and rounds of development with the most insane greenlight process where clients could do unpaid work that nobody else would do or be asked to do without a development deal, then to have ultimately go nowhere. That was what was coming through about Disney Plus. They were also saying, I assume, and then since then, things have kind of settled down because there's been so many executive changes. They wanted to say that I assume that there is an outgoing core business where they call the people to make the thing that they've already figured out. And they said that the Disney Plus non-scripted team had a really difficult job in saying what is a non-scripted show that's going to sit next to The Mandalorian or WandaVision. And then somebody else added, I find them pretty depressing. I wish they would open up their aperture because they've got the most powerful brands on earth. I wish they could open up their imagination to see that audiences that love Hawkeye and Shang-Chi would consume content that isn't literally about bows and arrows and martial arts, and instead it's just the audience of people that like those things. They said, but they did go on to say that everything that they do, they are putting lots of effort into the money. So there's generally a lot of discussion about frustration working with them, trying to get stuff greenlit, very awkward. Disney have gone through so many changes over the last couple of years, infrastructure, and Disney Plus, I mean, it felt like when in that first year or so, all we had was unscripted documentaries that were just flopping left after, or kid shows and reality everything they were putting on there was just like flapping about and doing nothing. It just whereas like now that we've hardly got any coming through. There's hardly any announcements coming through. And it's like, well, I can see why, because they weren't hitting. So why you keep spending money on something? I know they were trying to do it quickly to get stuff wrapped up while they wait for Star Wars and Marvel. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised with them calling this, because you could see it yourself, couldn't you?
Oh yeah, it was. I mean, even if we don't have a view into the back, we could tell that the unscripted group was really just kind of get any content, put it out there. We need content on Disney Plus, and you get about the quality of what you would expect from that. So it's not surprising to find it was a mess on the back end. That said, I don't really fault them too much for it, because again, without knowing what's going on behind the scenes, I strongly suspect that this was thrown together like literally at the last second when COVID was just beginning, and they're like, we need content. What can we do? Well, unscripted content is easy, and just start grabbing everything they could without actually having a plan in place. That doesn't absolve them from fault, assuming that's the way it went, but I can understand it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it like in a couple of ways. First off, prior to launch, and the ones that they submitted before they launched, was a lot of it was, what is Disney Plus? Well, it's just an extension of our core brands, and you know, we don't know if it's going to be a hit, so we don't want to spend a huge amount of money on stuff. The Marvel and Star Wars stuff is still going to be a while off because it takes a bit longer to make. Let's just, but I think also this whole thing of it being family friendly just made everything so bland and so safe that they rarely kind of push the edge to get audiences in. And I think that's been the key thing. If you look back over, you know, we're into year 3 of Disney Plus now. You look at how we're getting unscripted content now compared to 18 months ago, a year ago. It's like night and day. We're just not getting it in the same droves because it's almost like COVID stopped a lot of it, where they were like, look, we're just wasting money here on just, you know, stuff that just is not working.
And it wasn't even necessarily it wasn't working, but it wasn't just that. You looked at some of the shows that came out in that time frame, and you could tell they really didn't know what they wanted the shows to be, even after they had come out. Like specifically, I'm thinking of that Builder show where, you know, the first episode they had to build like a lending library, one of the ones that you see in the park.
Yeah.
You leave a book, take a book kind of deal. And you're like, okay, this is cool. There's a lot of potential in this, but it's 45 minutes long for them to construct a single project. And it just keeps going and going when this should have been a much tighter production. And so that one leaps out to me. And
Big Fib was another one that was just drastically just like, what's the point of this, you know? And then they kind of, you know, talking about like everything being branded to things, you know, like we had things like, you know, Be Our Chef, and then we had like Foodtastic was the most recent one, and also all like the Marvel documentaries and the Star Wars documentaries. It was like, that's kind of, you know, that was all over the place, and like because it had to be connected to a brand in order, because they felt that was the only way people were going to watch it.
Well, I mean, that's how Disney has operated for like 100 years at this point, where everything is connected to a brand. I thought Be Our Chef had potential. Again, it was another one where it had potential. I didn't say it was good.
It was awful. It was. Well, I would probably put that in there. It's probably one of my worst Disney Plus originals was Be Our Chef. I hated it. It was bad.
I wouldn't go nearly that far, but
look, I'm used to the Great British Bake Off and Master Chef and so this was like this. Even the kids version of Great British Bake Off was just like, no, it was just naff. It was just naff.
No, like I said, I think the idea wasn't bad. The execution was the real problem. But I think there is actually like an area for not top tier.
Yeah,
you know, the super amazing work of art foods, or even the Great British Bake Off, where it's not necessarily the best looking, but the judges love eating it every single week, kind of deal.
Yeah,
and finding kind of that content for, this is something that you actually could make at your home with a pan and have like a little Disney experience by, you know, making a Disney version of a common staple food. But the execution was not great.
I mean, I was just like looking here of just some of the ones that we did have. Now, I'm not including National Geographic in this because I'm going to put them I'm putting them into a different category because I think that kind of things in. I mean, things like, you know, we had like the Imagineering story was so great, and it was on like a different level than everything else. I'd also put prop culture kind of into that same thing as well. But so many, I mean, things like, Left and Ed was kind of scripted, so we can't really count that one. It's like On Point. It was like, you know, it was a solid series, but it was like, okay, who are you trying to pull in on this one?
Well, but that's also the counterpoint to everything needs to be branded, right? You know, On Point, it's strictly ballet. It has almost no connection whatsoever to Disney at all. So I appreciate they at least tried it. We are also not the target audience for it.
Yeah, I do remember at least with On Point, at least like had it was an interesting story from the point of view of what they were trying. So I can give them a pass on that. Becoming, I remember that one. That was just an awful series because they just picked a load of celebrities that nobody really outside of the internet, you know, picking a load of American athletes, and was just, it was a very poor decision globally. That's not a very good global release.
Right. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but it is still a thing for regional content, and sometimes the regional content will be American. I think the bigger thing with it was, though, it did indicate that Disney had not yet come to terms with the fact that Disney Plus was a global brand.
Yeah.
And they tried to push it in places that are not America, because
Mm.
it's very different if you just go, here's this regional series, it's from America, we'll push it hard in America, and if you're in the UK or Australia or wherever, it's there if you want it. But they actually tried to push it in those regions, and it's like, and in which case I agree with you. It's like, why would you try to push this in the
I
UK?
just know if I put this list of people and pictures of these, my parents would never have a clue who any of these people were.
Mhm.
And that, my parents might not be the best thing, but I think even if I showed this to my wife, I don't think she might recognize him from a movie and for him from Stranger Things, but generally, and my friends, I think it's the same thing again with my friends. If I showed them this list, I'm not sure they would have recognized many of them. I think the concept was right, but it was just a very there
was nothing wrong with the series itself. It was how they decided to advertise it. And honestly, if you show that same list to a lot of Americans, they might not be able to pull out all 10 of them, but you get to the end of it. I think Rob Gronkowski was at the end of it, right? And a lot of Americans were like, "Oh, the Gronk. Let's see what's going on with him." Said, "Yeah, if you're in the UK, I'm like, why would you advertise this? No one in the UK is going to care about this." But in America, it's going to be completely different. But
I feel like, National Geographic to me was always that kind of thing of use National Geographic to make your documentary. It's that kind of thing of, they have to go for that first rather than let the Disney Plus original ones that weren't done by National Geographic just seem to miss it. And it definitely feels like National Geographic, they've got much better systems in place for making much better reality TV shows. In that same article about Unscripted, they went on to say the exact opposite thing about Hulu. Hulu are greenlighting lots more content. They're much more open to stuff, the freedom into, again, because I think Hulu was like they're on a scratch grab to get as much original content that they could, but they didn't have the limitation of the family friendly stuff, and they were able to push, because I really feel like the D'Amelio show, it was a Star original internationally on Disney Plus. I honestly felt like that was probably one of the better shows that they put out, and I really felt like it was a perfect show for Disney Plus for the target audience. If you're aiming for teenagers, this show was about it. It was all about some TikTokers becoming really successful and the downsides of fame. If it's a rated 14 for reality, this would have been I think a much better Disney Plus show, because it was exactly the target audience they were going for. But Hulu has grabbed that audience.
I didn't watch it, so I really can't comment.
No, I think it's kind of stand to me. It's like you're talking about a documentary about TikTokers. If that's not kids and teenagers, that's kind of the thing of it. And we got like the Kardashian show coming up as well. That's going to be a big hit for Hulu in the US, and I think massive hit internationally on Disney Plus. But I just thought it was quite interesting seeing it from the other side of these experts kind of saying of how the unscripted side. And then you look at it and go, look, we could see that it was like spaghetti against the wall to find out what would work. The branding was all off. They didn't know what they were making. And, like, what is a Disney Plus original? How does it stand up against WandaVision and Mandalorian? There was very little that was able to stand up. And even now, I still feel like Disney Plus is in that same position, because they haven't had that focus on giving us variety.
Yeah, there's definitely been a divide between the Marvel and Star Wars content and all the rest of it. Even if some of them are actually getting really good at this point, we love the Mysterious Benedict Society. You've got even Big Shot was a lot of fun. But even if they were on par with them in terms of like storytelling, which for the most part I'd probably say they weren't, they're not generating the hype the way the Marvel and the Star Wars ones are. And it honestly, it probably won't be until we start getting the Percy Jackson series that they start having stuff that can generate it.
I'm hoping Willow might be one that might be one able to push the boundaries a little bit more, because Willow's going to be odd, because it's not a franchise people are accustomed to. But if it's a good enough series, it could end up. Well, depends on how it works.
I think the fantasy aspect of it will work more in its favor than any name recognition. Sure, people in our generation will recognize Willow. Even if we didn't watch it, we were at least aware of it as part of that era when fantasy stories of this nature were becoming really popular, like Labyrinth and Dark Crystal and so on. But yeah, once you get past people born a little bit later, it's like, oh yeah, I know Princess Bride, I know those, but Willow, maybe not. That said, if they can do it as a good fantasy series, they can do some good marketing. It's got some potential there. I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting how all of this works together in the long run. But I think it does feel like the problem is because of what happens in the US, then like feeds into international. International's now starting to get this gist of, right, okay, we're going after this one streaming service. We have the stories you like and the stories you wouldn't, and that's kind of, they're using this push now of they're feeling more comfortable with it. Definitely Pam and Tommy has been pushing the boundaries this week of kind of people going, I thought Disney just had this. Like, no, and then, the comments underneath go, we've had this for a year now. It's just, we've had The Walking Dead all through the winter, but no one noticed. But yeah, so this one really kind of caught it. But let's jump into some other quick bits of news. Our favorite Disney Plus original is going to be returning for a second season. Doogie Kamealoha MD has been confirmed. So we will be seeing a second season of that one. Don't know yet when that will be arriving. They've not really confirmed anything. It's just, I'm gathering probably. They probably can turn it around quite quickly because it's not got a lot of special effects. But it might be next year or very late this year if they're lucky. On one hand, it's like I love the scenery. I love Hawaii, but overall, I still it was a disappointing series for me.
Obviously for me too. Yeah. That said, I am happy for it getting a second season, especially since shows like this do tend to find their voice around the second or third season, and getting it a second chance where the writers can take a look at what worked, what didn't work in season one. I'll hold out a sliver of optimism that they can turn it around and turn season two into something that's worth watching. But then again, even if it turns out, go ahead.
I was going to say they did it with Diary of a Female President. Yeah, because the second season was much better. Victor, Love Victor was a lot better in the second season. Not that the first season was bad, but generally, they found their voice a bit more.
Yeah, especially with shows like this. There was a kind of a spaghetti approach, spaghetti at the wall for season one, where they're kind of figuring out, and you could definitely tell that some episodes were higher quality than other episodes and worked better. So they take that feedback, they see what worked for them, worked with the focus groups, and maybe kind of refine season two. There's potential there. The problem was never the concept. The problem was the execution, and now they have another shot at it. I will at least check out the first episode, probably the first two episodes when it comes out. We will see if they take it.
I just hope they make her more into a teenager, to give her a little bit more rebellious side and just kind of exploring a bit, because she was so like acting like a 12-year-old rather than a 16-year-old doctor making loads of money. That's my only thing. Moving on from there was another big announcement for another big series. We're going to be getting a brand new Goosebumps series. Sony are making this for Disney Plus. Apparently, it's been in the works for a while. 10 episodes. It follows a group of 5 high schoolers who unleash supernatural forces upon their town and must work all together thanks to and in spite of their friendships, rivalries, and pasts with each other in order to save it, learning much about their own parents' teenage secrets in the process. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't think I've ever watched anything with Goosebumps. I've never read a book. I'm like, everyone goes, so 400 million books, and they got all these series, and they got all these movies, and I go, I have no idea what this is.
Well, it is worth remembering. R.L. Stine was the writer, and he did that Halloween series that we watched last year.
Just Beyond.
Which I wasn't really fond of, but it's the same style as Goosebumps. Yeah, that's true. It was an anthology, so some were better than others. Really, it felt to me like Twilight Zone light, which was okay. But Goosebumps is very much in the same. Just Beyond, in fact, would probably be a slightly older version of Goosebumps. Older as in mature rather than like from before. That said, the Goosebumps name is extremely well known, especially to American audiences. There will be people watching this. There definitely will be an audience for this, but
Yeah.
I'm expecting it to be a bit more like Just Beyond, so it's not really my jam.
Yeah, but then now again, there is nothing wrong with aiming
No, absolutely not.
at this audience. Another great series. I mean, it's just kind of, to me, was like, that sounds good. That sounds like a high quality kid show, which is, if you can make a kid show and make it appeal to and adults can enjoy it, great. But also know your audience, aim for that, go for that kind of thing. It's not American Horror Story. This is aimed, obviously, this is their stepping stone into it.
No, I will 100% just say it is Twilight Zone for kids, and it's toned down for kids. And I certainly know plenty of people who watched Goosebumps as kids and grew up and became really big horror aficionados, and they love that thrill kind of thing going on. There will be people watching it. This is a big name for Disney, and I'm actually surprised it kind of slipped under the radar.
Yeah, I'm surprised that it didn't actually get picked up. I'm just looking here now so the series came out in the original, because there was an original series. Yeah, that came out in '95. So yeah, so I was probably I would have been actually the right age, but if it depends on what network it ran, if we did get it on, because sometimes that actually happens a bit with American shows, especially internationally. If it goes on if it went on the wrong channel or on one that was behind a paywall, it could just stifle how much it would grow, because it's like the Disney Channel, because it was always lumped in on a premium movie channel package. It really had a much less impact here. If it was on a Saturday morning on like BBC or ITV or Channel 4, it could get mass audiences. Things were on the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon on the Sky packages. You on cable, the viewership was just maybe a tenth of what it was. So that's always a kind of interesting thing with these ones.
And it's similar here in the States too, especially before streaming started to become prevalent. If you had a popular, mostly they would come from the UK. You had a popular show, it might show on PBS, and if that was the case, like Downton Abbey from several years ago, then that would become popular if it aired at the right time and if it was marketed right. But more often than not, they would get shuffled off to some random channel that you never watched at like 2:00 in the morning. And this is something that would happen to a show like Snowdrop or something like that, which is critically acclaimed in the Asian regions, coming over here now. The old style 90s, 2000s, you might have heard about it and then it would just kind of disappear. But now it's on streaming. It will be front and center on Disney Plus. And I suspect it will draw in quite a bit of audience actually in the coming weeks.
I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, I've not watched any. I'm really looking forward to giving this one a go next week. It's actually high on my watch. So at least I'm going to plan to watch at least an episode or two to kind of catch up, because I mean, it's got so much attention, so much. I mean, this one in Rookie Cops, just the amount of people that are excited for it in my social feeds and telling me about it constantly is like, okay, this is what I want. That kind of thing of, when Disney release a show and I hear crickets is when you're like, and I'm there going, everyone watch, it is good, honestly. Whereas this is like, no, they're telling me it's good. That's what, and I'm that's what you want.
I very briefly glanced at some of the reviews coming out of South Korea when this was airing originally. And just like, oh, these reviews are really good. People are really enjoying this. And then I let it slide because I knew it was coming over here. I wanted to experience it. But like, all right, let's bring this over. And I think I keep belaboring the point, but Squid Games really opened up people's willingness to try out these kind of shows.
Well, I think the number one show right now on Netflix is All of Us Are Dead, which is another. I haven't got around to watching that one myself yet.
That's a South Korean zombie show, right?
Yeah. I'm in Australia this past week in Disney Plus. They added like 5 or 6 movies and stuff. They're really starting to ramp up now. This internet, I think Squid Game and all these shows are really highlighting. Going, hold on, we have these shows. We should check them on. Just like people will watch it. It's like, well, yeah, because we're much more willing to give it a go. I mean, I walked through the living room to make a cup of tea before we did. My wife was watching Money Heist on Netflix, Spanish show. We are much more likely now to try these things, and yes, it's all good.
And it will be a double-edged sword in the long run for two reasons. Right now, we get the best content because the companies can go over there and go, all right, South Korean shows, they just don't do very well. So what do you got that's really popular? Oh, the Squid Games. Okay, let's try this, and like it explodes. So they got the best content, and now people are going to be in a rush to get anything. We remember this from, well, I guess anime would be the best example where they brought a couple over and people were like, oh my god, this is amazing, and then they started bringing everything over, and they're kind of like, oh, there is actually a range of good to bad, just like everything else.
Like American TV shows, it's like
no, that's bad to mediocre.
You started on me, but nevertheless, we're gonna have got a couple more quick things to go through before we get into some reviews. This one was one that you wanted specifically to talk about, More Than Robots, which is coming to Disney Plus on the 18th of March. So this one's a little bit off. And it will be debuting at the South by Southwest Film Festival on March the 14th. And it's all about a group of teenagers coming together. So you just love this one.
I did. I've got a lot of not direct connections to it, but a lot of people I know who are involved in the robotics stuff. It's just part of the sphere of work that I do. One of my coworkers tutored. We're talking like kindergarten age stuff. So they're not even like robots. They're like Legos, but get them started and doing this kind of thing. And he's judged college level competitions. And of course, most of us here in the States grew up with like battle bots and
I was going to say Robot Wars was our one.
Oh yeah. Robot Wars, battle bots. There've been a number of them over the years, and it's been fun watching them advance. Cause like you go back to the originals and their robots are literally like, it goes forward and backwards and can turn at 20-degree angles. And now they're just like, oh yeah, this is the detonator. It would absolutely dominate on a modern battlefield, and we're seeing the beginning of Skynet, etc. But yeah, I am really excited for this. Obviously the focus seems to be more on these kids and having them have the opportunity to do this, but I don't know, I just love these robot shows. They're so much fun.
I find like with the documentaries that are like, if it's just like an hour one or something like that, it's like, tell us the story, see where it is, and it's either going to work for me or it isn't. It's very, on my kind of like excitement level, it's not that high. It's just, I'll be honest, it's not my favorite thing to be looking forward to. I'll give it a go when it arrives, but it's kind of one of those things. This one's up for that documentary when I start watching it, will it capture me? I'll watch it, I will be watching it, but it didn't quite pull me in that much.
Oh no, totally understandable. This is again kind of like I recognize that when I watch it, like this is a specific personal interest. I'm not sure how much widespread interest it will be, but as a documentary, we'll talk about this again when we get to Torn. I do encourage people to watch documentaries outside of what they like and outside of what they would normally, because you learn all sorts of new things, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I don't know which this one will be, but just exposing yourself to some of the cool stuff that's going on in the world is always worthwhile.
Yeah, because I kind of think back to some other, like I enjoyed Science Fair, but I didn't think much of Own the Room. It's like they were both very much on the same topic, but like one worked, one didn't. So I'm kind of putting it into that territory of kind of content. But again, this is the kind of stuff that Disney are picking up. They tend to pick them up at like film festivals and stuff, and I like this kind of stuff. A little bit of variety.
Yeah, and honestly, it should just be a bit of fun. And it is important to note, especially nowadays, robotics competitions are not strictly battle bots. Even from the trailer, you can see it's like, well, design a robot that will shoot basketballs. How many baskets can this robot shoot in a minute or whatever? And they give these kids very interesting challenges that they have to overcome with robotics. So I love it. I realize not everyone will, but I'm super excited for this.
Cool. And we also got another trailer for another new movie coming to Disney Plus and to Hulu, which is called No Exit, which is kind of like a horror movie where a girl ends up having to she escapes, I think from, I don't know if it's got a juvenile delinquent place or something, or I think it was a juvenile. Yeah.
I was leaning towards it being a mental facility,
Yeah.
but I could see an argument for it just
Yeah.
being a standard juvenile detention facility as well. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, so she ends up finding a kid they end up all getting stuck in a building while it's snowing, and all hell breaks loose, and one of them is the killer. And I watched the trailer and went, yeah, that's it. And I just look at my wife's gonna love this one too. And I was just like, yeah, this is a nice horror kind of scary movie. Not usually what I tend to like, but I actually thought the trailer looked pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I'll give that a go. It's that kind of thing of like, I saw the rating one. Even if that was on Netflix, I probably would have ended up watching that one.
Oh yeah, this captured my attention. The trailer looks great. I might be a little, but I would probably call it a thriller rather than horror, based on, because like horror you think of like slasher, everything, but it's very definitely suspenseful.
Yeah,
just from the trailer of like who is the bad guy. It's a classic locked mystery room with some added twists on top of it. You got some trafficking going on, of all things, and it's just like, yeah, I'm in. I am looking forward to this. I'll be watching it as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, so that one looks pretty good. This past week we got a new documentary on Disney Plus called Torn, which is all about an ice climber or a mountain climber. They ended up in the Himalayas. They ended up getting basically killed by an avalanche. It was him and also a partner, and it kind of follows on, giving us an idea of who they were, why they were there, what happened, and then kind of going into a whole other different kind of side of things where, we're hearing from his family, from his wife, from his kids, about the after effects of him dying, but also then it kicks into his best friend, Conrad, who kind of ends up with some survivor's guilt and kind of ends up falling in love with his best friend's ex-wife, and within like 2 years are married. And then we have the whole issue then of the kids accepting him as a stepfather. But what's really got this one very, very different was the eldest kid is the director and the filmmaker. So it's a very personal, and I think that really lets them go much deeper in, because it's essentially a mum talking to her son, and and the brother talking to a brother, and they're very much more open about it. And they end up going up to the Himalayas to bring back their dad's body when he's discovered. And I mean, this was some heavy stuff. I thought it was a very interesting documentary, very hard hitting. Can't praise enough. Watch it. I think the fact that, like I said, it being done by the son, they were able to go much deeper into the emotional connection than maybe we would have. And you felt it. You felt for the character, and they made him human. They made Alex feel like a human. They didn't make him feel like a superhuman that that could do no wrong. It's like they showed his bad side. What he's. Yeah, I thought this was a great documentary.
It's an extremely well done documentary. It's a very uncomfortable documentary for a wide variety of reasons. It at times felt too personal. I actually felt like I was intruding on this family at several points. And if it had been done by someone who was not part of the family, I'd almost be like, don't watch it because this guy is intruding. But because it's done by the son, you get kind of like, yes, he's giving you permission to join them on this journey. Where if it's someone else, maybe back off a little bit.
Yeah. I was just going to say, there was like one scene of like he puts the camera down and he just goes and sits down, and his dad is in the body bag next to him, and it was just like, well, this is pretty heavy stuff, and then basically them all just like having that moment of like, just like, I would almost say like relief of like, they finally got some closure, and it was such a just was not expecting that in this movie.
No, and I got almost none of that from like the description or the trailer that we saw from before. I was expecting it to be primarily about the climber himself, Alex, and what he had done and why he was so famous within the climbing community at that time. And that really wasn't the story. You get pieces of it because they're integral to the story, but the story was really the family, the family coming to terms, regrowing around the new family dynamics. Some of the kids coping with it, some of the kids not coping with it, them very honestly talking about like, I expected my father to show up any day for years and years and years. Like he would just appear, and the wife having nightmares about, you know, him reappearing after she'd gotten remarried and being like, oh, what do I do in this situation? And
Well, that's
then,
that.
yeah,
They're not being able to have the closure, is it? That thing of that never-ending question of like, well, what if he's in a, you know, what if he's trapped? What if he get, you know, and that thing of not being able to move on because, and obviously the closure of them finding the body, and I mean, just like the scene where his wife is like basically checking the body to kind of for the clothing and mark, and you know, talking about how he was crunched over in the avalanche, and it's like, well, this is really, I don't know, it definitely. It's not as I said, it's not a comfortable film to watch, and again pushes that boundary of what Disney Plus can offer. Because I don't think this would have been on Disney Plus a year ago. This does feel it. You know, this is a serious documentary with some hard issues, and yeah, it was a great documentary. I'm really glad I watched it again. It's just so different than what you'd expect.
Yeah, and going back to a point we made earlier, this is not something I would have watched on my own normally. If we weren't watching it for review purposes, I'd probably been like, mountain climbing. I watched Free Solo. I'm good. I know what mountain climbing is about, but watching something that is outside of my normal wheelhouse really ended up being a very enlightening thing, because I did learn about what the climbing was like in the 80s, and seeing what this fan, because I had no idea who this guy was. In fact, when I saw it at first, I was like, oh, that's the Free Solo guy. Oh, no, this isn't the Free Solo guy.
Yeah, I was the same.
But this is kind of what I meant earlier, though, where you and we love like space documentaries, underwater documentaries, stuff about whales and stuff. But honestly, we don't really learn anything from them anymore. You know, I will watch a whale documentary to see the pretty pictures, and I might learn like one trivia piece. But this entire documentary is stuff I did not know.
Yeah.
And sometimes just going outside of your comfort zone and picking a documentary, like, I know nothing about this. I don't think I'm interested in this, but whatever. Let's see if this documentary can convince me. It's worth doing that every once in a while.
I literally, it's funny because I said to my wife when we were going out walking the dog earlier today, and I said, so I watched this documentary last night, and I said, I feel like part of this whole thing of like doing the podcast and doing the website. I said, I feel like I'm sometimes I'm trying stuff out that I never would normally do. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes, you know, you end up watching stuff that you maybe wouldn't have necessarily gone and watched. You end up sometimes also watching stuff you wouldn't have gone and watched and you didn't like it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's different. But sometimes, you know, like this here, this is great. I mean, we've been saying about like National Geographic documentaries to me are like, if you're going to do like documentaries and like, let them do it. Just let them go. Let this team put together what they're doing, because they are hitting home run. I mean, they're nominated. They announced the BAFTAs this past week. 3 out of the 5 documentaries are National Geographic ones on on Disney Plus, like Becoming Cousteau, like The Rescue, and I can't think of what the other one was. But you know, these are in such a different, and you know, these are going to be up for awards. You know, these are top quality documentaries, and Torn is another just a great addition onto Disney Plus.
I think this is absolutely something that people should check out, especially if you're kind of in that, what should I watch? I've already seen all the things. Let's see. Torn is a good one, but I wish that the description on it was a little better, because a lot of people are going to go into it the same way, where it's like, oh, I liked Free Solo. Let's learn about this other mountain climber. And it's like, yeah, that's not what this is about. You have to be in the right mental frame to get through this, but it's absolutely worth watching.
Yeah, just can't recommend that enough. So please, if you've got to watch over the weekend or this week, you know, pop this on your watch list. You know what, you know, give it a go. This kind of things, and The Rescue, and just these kind of things, just give them a whirl. Shifting gears now, let's now talk about another Disney Plus original this week, which was the 6th episode of The Mandalorian season 2.5, otherwise known as the Book of Boba Fett. I love this episode. I thought this was great. And there's been a bit of a toing and froing between like fan service, and it's not the Boba Fett show anymore. I didn't care. I love this show. I got to the end of this one, I was like, I need to watch this again. It was just like, I really enjoyed it. This felt like I was a kid watching. You know, this was like just after the events of Return of the Jedi. You never would have imagined you'd have had this. It wasn't where I thought the show was going to go. with Luke and Ahsoka and Grogu, and it just was like, yeah, I'm loving this. I don't care. It's basically online. It's just called Star Wars, the series in the title. That's it.
Yeah, so I was kind of the opposite on it, but not for the reasons listed. I especially after last week, I just accepted Mandalorian and Boba Fett. It's literally just one long story.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they would do away with pretending they're not, but yeah, you just kind of have to go. It is the adventures of Mando and his super friends. And it's just one long series. That said, all of the stuff with Baby Yoda, not all of the stuff, the majority of the stuff with Baby Yoda put me to sleep. I was so bored during that entire sequence. I think it would have been fine if it was just like a couple of minutes of Luke teaching Baby Yoda the basics of the Force and drawing it out of him, but it just kept going. And I was like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, if this had been in the Mandalorian proper as well, and you don't have the why is Baby Yoda in Boba Fett, I still would have been bored. This entire sequence just went on way too long.
I think, I wondered, like, I was at one point, why they're really kind of going in on Luke here. I was, like, less is more maybe with him, because he's a bit, he does look a bit funny because obviously the CGI and stuff. But it was like a little bit less might have been more. I mean, he looks a lot better than he did in maybe they didn't have to hide it the same way, so they were able to do it a bit better. But
you can see that technology has been improving very significantly and very quickly. Like even going from Tarkin in Rogue One to them using it with Luke in Mando season 2, and then this one here. Visually, I didn't actually really have too many problems with Luke. His voice was a little bit weird, but visually, for the most part, it was solid.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just love that whole thing. I love the fact of like bringing Ahsoka in and just like obviously like this whole thing of like Grogu not allowing to see Mando, and it was a bit weird. Like hold on, they've just given this kid, a cost, some armor. Might not be a bad idea to put the kid in it anyway. Keep falling asleep all the time. It's like just. I know it's not laws, but it kind of would make sense to give him the lightsaber and the thing so he can kind of protect himself when the Death Troopers and the Dark Troopers and the whatever the secret troopers all turn up. Like, give him some protection, kid.
Yeah, and obviously the point of that is forcing Baby Yoda to make a choice. Does he want to be with Mando or does he want to be a Jedi? But yeah, in practice, I'm like, just give him both. Yoda's not using his lightsaber, not to be, too morbid about it. Just give him both.
It's that kind of weird thing. Like the kid can't even talk yet. Can we giving him a lightsaber might seem a bit, I don't know. It's like on one hand, it does feel like, the Adventures of Mando, you kind of wanted to carry on with Grogu, but there is that kind of thing like, we need Grogu ready for the next generation, like decades down the line. He needs to be a Jedi because we need Yoda. We need a new Yoda, and then they can do. I don't know. There's not necessarily the High Republic, but the Super High Republic in like 10 years' time, and set it 500 years in the future, and Grogu's an old character kind of thing.
I'd be perfectly fine with that, honestly. But yeah, it was interesting. I suspect that final shot from the scene is setting him up, showing up in the next episode as well.
Yeah.
And I will be honest, if he does not show up in the next episode as part of the cavalry showing up, I'll be like, why did we spend half an episode on him? Because
it kind of feels a little bit like we're going into the finale of the Book of Boba Fett. And I'm like, you do know where Boba Fett's supposed to be having this big fight that we're supposed to. It was I'm really struggling with this series of like, I've loved the last 2 episodes. And it's a bit along the lines of like, yeah, I just wanted more Mando. I didn't really want the Book of Boba Fett. And also, him just wandering around the desert for episode after episode now just seems completely irrelevant. And yeah.
I'll go back to the idea that more than likely that little kid Tusken will have grown up a bit and is leading his own Raider band and will show up in the final episode. I think that's where they're going with it.
And we're also going to have, obviously Boba's going to come riding in on his Rancor at some point. They've set that up. That's coming up. So we know that's coming in. It just feels like, who are they going to fight? Because it's like we've not really even got a villain yet.
Well, we have a representative of the villains at this point, but you're right. We don't have the proper villain yet. I do want to talk about the representative though, because that was the scene in the show where I was like, yes, this I've been waiting for this since Mandalorian was first announced. I wanted to see this character come back. So I was not bored through the entire episode. Once they shifted away from Baby Yoda's story and we had the council where Boba Fett shows up for 5 minutes in his own show, and then we moved to the high desert with Mando trying to recruit Timothy Oliphant, and then the scene that happens right after it. And that scene was fantastic. It's one of my favorite scenes from the entirety of Boba Fett, and it would actually rank pretty high if we included all the Mandalorian stuff as well.
And the thing is, we don't want him killed off yet. We've literally had like 3 seconds. The heel needs to either get a win and do something, set up the next series, or he has to scarper off, because he always tended to do that in the Clone Wars, and he tended to kind of scarper off at the last minute when he knew he lost.
So you can go either way with it. I obviously would really prefer if he does not die. I would like to see him continue to be an antagonist throughout this, and he's got the potential to be a good long-term antagonist. But at the same time, he does have a history with Boba Fett, and they do need to resolve his story with Boba Fett, because if you remember back in the Clone Wars series, he was a mentor to young Boba Fett. They had a falling out that was never filmed because it was part of one of the canceled seasons, and they chose not to do it in the last season. But him and Boba Fett have had a falling out, and so there's unresolved story there.
But also, the trouble is, that's great if you know it. That's true. Like my father, who watches all this, he doesn't watch the kid stuff. He doesn't watch the animated. So he's going to come into this, and he's like, "Who's that alien with red eyes?" And it's like he needs to have that. We gotta build him up and get him ready.
Right, and that's why I hope they don't kill him. Let him have a chance to grow as a character on his own, separate from what we know of him in Clone Wars and his brief appearance in like Bad Batch. But I think they did it in such a way in this episode where you really don't need to know who he was. If you know it, it adds a layer to it. But the entrance, the way it's shot, the whole chain of events, you can just go, I have no idea who this guy is, but his visual design is really cool. And you can tell he is a serious threat based on his
actions. It's just what he just what he does.
Well, just the duel that he had with Timothy Oliphant and the random dude.
Yeah, it's like you're dying, mate. You're going.
Oh, the second
you must be wearing a red coat at this point. You know?
I know. The second you see Bane starting to walk out of the desert, and Timothy turns to the deputy. He's like, "You need to go inside." And the deputy's kind of like, "No, I have to stand by." He's like, "Okay, you are going to be the guy who dies to prove that Bane is a serious threat. We know where this is going." But even with that whole shot, the tension building, him slowly walking into town, it's like this is perfect Western right here.
Yeah. But no, but that seems to be the thing of Tatooine kind of really allows them to let that kind of Western side go, because they can lean in on it. So because visually it looks like the middle of Montana.
Yeah. And I will also grant them the very first scene when we were introduced to Timothy Oliphant in this here. Obviously, he appeared in Mandalorian before, but here where he's confronting the Spice Runners and just doing the traditional Western sheriff of a lawless town. Yeah. Dick was just like, I'm really digging this opening. And then it shifted over to Baby Yoda. And of course,
it kind of feels, I was going to say, kind of feels like we're not ready for this to kind of be the last episode of this. It feels like it's like, we're not ready yet. We got some more stuff we need to know about, which obviously going to get sorted out in Mandalorian season. Whether or not we're just going to get to the final scene and it continues in Mandalorian season 3 coming in January 2024 kind of thing. And that's kind of just going to leave us, or 2023. So it's going to be like, they're just going to leave us like hanging, we're not even going to see Grogu in the next episode. They'll leave that.
I hope that there is at least some form of conclusion here, but it feels weird to say it because I agree with you. It's like, no, there's still things we need to know. There's still things you need to set up for the final episode to do it properly. But what the heck were you doing with the first 4 episodes? you set up like one plot point per episode. What were you doing with all that time?
He just was wandering around the desert, just kind of becoming a different Boba Fett than the one we think he is, and when he's in the suit. That's just, I just really, it's like the trouble is these last 2 episodes of everyone kind of going, Boba Fett's great now, but he's not in it.
Yeah, no, Mando 2.5. It's been great, and honestly, even in this episode with Boba Fett, it's kind of like, yeah, this is actually how you should be using the character. He is the on high general directing things, but he's not the main character. He is the supporting character, and he's always worked best that way. We'll see what happens next episode, though. Obviously, we're expecting some fireworks, some explosions,
Hopefully it's a long
some
episode
surprises
as well.
It
could be a good hour. It's got to be an hour.
It's got to be on par with the Krayt Dragon episode from Mandalorian to really make this feel satisfying. I mean, they can pull it off. They've certainly earned our faith that they can finish this in a satisfying way. Because you go back to like Mandalorian season 1, and that started pretty slow too, but it ended up ending on a very high note. Mando season 2 was great, and they have shown that they can pull everything together in the end.
But then I almost wondered, is this going to be like the Empire Strikes Back, where they have to lose to kind of like regroup? Because if they win and send the Psych Syndicate off, where does it go from there? Kind of, if they lose and they have to retreat, or they, because there's only like 4 of them anyway. So it's like they'll get on Fire Spray 1 and the Naboosh fighter and just get out of the town because they've lost, and setting up the villain then as their main core. Because that's how I'm thinking. Because it's just like they've got nowhere to go if they win. They need a loss. I don't know.
You could almost do a 7 Samurai approach, and I'm wondering if that might be what they're doing, because we functionally have 4 characters at this point, with several others lined up as potential backups. If you end up with 7, this could end up be a 7 Samurai or Magnificent 7 if you want to go with that route. But can they do that? Because spoilers for a 70-year-old movie, like all but 2 of them die. 3 of them, I think, actually.
And that's generally Star Wars doesn't like killing characters off,
except for Rogue One.
Yeah, well, it feels like they've put too much effort into. They've kind of got this Disney Plus train to ride right now. It doesn't feel like I can't help but feel like Rogue One was special, and then we're going to ride it. Well, we're going to go back before we're going to do this pre-story.
And of course, this entire series is based on a character who should, by all rights, be dead at the end of Return of the Jedi. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see how this works out. So I'm definitely going to be interested to see how this works on Wednesday.
Oh, and Fennec too. Fennec should be dead after Mandalorian season 1. So this is the resurrection show.
They've really not used her much this series, have they?
Not
she
really.
Did that whole running fight at the beginning, and then she did a little bit of a fight getting the palace back, but that's been about it really. It's like I'm sitting there like it's like this show could have been so much more than it if they just dedicated way too much time to Boba Fett doing nothing. And did it help the character? He just walks in with his helmet on, and we all kind of know it doesn't really matter. Does it? That's the kind of
We'll see how next episode goes. Obviously, we'll be watching it the second it appears on Disney Plus, and I am really hoping that we get the best of both worlds here. We get a satisfying conclusion to this series while also getting a proper setup to Mandalorian season 3, which will presumably be where this story continues.
Yes. I mean, the good thing is it doesn't look like we'll have to wait too long, because we've obviously got Obi-Wan Kenobi series coming, which looks to be May. We're also going to be getting the Bad Batch season 2, and we've got Andor. So we have got, it's not like this time last year or when the Mandalorian finished and we had to wait a year. We know we've got a little bit more Star Wars stuff in between, but should be a lot of fun. But nevertheless, let us know what you think of the Book of Boba Fett. Love to hear your thoughts. Remember to go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. And on that note, guys, thank you very much. See you guys soon. Later. Thank you very much for watching this video. Make sure you go check us out over at whatsondisneyplus.com. Like, follow, and subscribe. Also, a huge thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and also on our YouTube channel memberships. And I shall see you guys in another video. Laters.